It'll be on display until February 2025. Piece of history. Well, that does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for April 30th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. The protest has become an occupation. Things escalated Tuesday at Columbia University as pro-Palestinian activists seized a building and barricaded behind desks, chairs, and vending machines. Was it students, activists, agitators? Our Haley Ott is up there trying to sort it out. We'll also update you on spikes in other nationwide campus demonstrations. Not everywhere is escalating. We have an update from the ground in Gaza as well, with a member of the International Rescue Committee who is just back from the war zone. And Galway Drive in Charlotte, North Carolina felt like a war zone Monday. 500 rounds of projectiles and casings were left after a shootout with law enforcement. We'll talk to the police chief about the casualties in his unit and the U.S. Marshal Service. Donald Trump's trial is going again. He received his gag order punishment as well. He got a fine. But there's an exception. If Trump's former attack dog, Michael Cohen, attacks him, the former president can bark right back. Two wrongs make it all right. Congress isn't usually the place we turn for a respite from acrimony, but the top House Democrat told the Republican Speaker he's got his back if any of Mike Johnson's radical wing tries to remove him from office. We'll explain what's behind the assist. And soon enough, we may all be relying on assistance of artificial intelligence, and the ethical implications are fascinating. When does a tool slip from being useful to becoming so useful it coaxes us into giving away our autonomy? And finally, the feds have changed the classification of marijuana, and we have two findings that would fascinate its users for hours. Fresh pictures from the nursery of the stars, and a find from antiquity that keeps popping up and no one can quite figure out what it is. See what you think. The Daily Report starts in a moment. Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report with unrest on college campuses and college administrators struggling to maintain safety. At the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, police removed protesters using pepper spray after they took down the school's American flag and replaced it with a Palestinian one. The school says 36 protesters were detained, including 13 current students. At Columbia University, which sparked many of the protests elsewhere, the school says it will now expel any student who stormed a campus building Tuesday morning. Protesters broke into Hamilton Hall and then locked the doors from inside. Here's some of what we've been hearing.
It doesn't seem to me that they're calling for peace. It seems like they're calling for more violence.
They threaten us with suspension. They prevent us from using the bathroom. They prevent us from getting food. They prevent us from receiving water. Although these conditions are completely uncomparable to the siege our people face back home in Gaza, we know very well what this is. This is a siege.
Though protesters at Brown, Yale, and Johns Hopkins have receded or ended altogether, dozens of people were arrested Monday and Tuesday during college campus protests across the nation, including in Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Georgia. CBS News reporter Haley Ott has been on the ground following the story from Columbia University and joins us now. Haley, what were the biggest concerns among the people you've spoken to, both students and any outside protesters you might have talked to?
Hi, John. Yeah, so I've been here speaking to people all day, and what's important to say up top is that I haven't been able to get on campus today. Usually the media has been allowed in. We haven't been today. The gates have been closed. So the people that I've spoken to have been people like the ones that you may be able to see behind me, protesters. Some of those are students. Some of those are outside groups. I've also spoken to faculty, staff, students who live on campus who aren't affiliated with the protests at all. And what I found really interesting was that when I asked everybody who I spoke to for the most part today what they thought the main thing that the news should express and that people were missing about these protests, a lot of them responded saying that it was the distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. A lot of people told me that they felt that there was a big misunderstanding between those two terms. They said that anti-Zionism was a political ideology. It was them rejecting the state of Israel and its practices and policies. And they said that anti-Semitism was prejudice against the Jewish people, which they did not support.
Central question in this, of course, being whether people who are Jewish feel a sense of threat, regardless of the distinction being made. Have you, in terms of those security measures you mentioned, what else is going on? They're not letting non-students in. Any other extra security measures?
And it's also important to stress, just to your point, that people who would have felt unsafe on campus today didn't come here today, so they wouldn't have been here for me to speak to. They've closed down campus. That's the main security measure that they've taken today. Behind me, past this group of protesters, you won't be able to see it here, there's an airport-style security setup where students are waiting in line, faculty, staff with their IDs. They can buzz them on a buzzer, and if they've been pre-approved to enter campus, they're allowed in. If not, if their work isn't deemed essential, then they're turned away. Many people were turned away today. Professors, people trying to go to the library. The people who were able to get in were pretty much only people who lived in dorms on campus.
And Haley, did you talk to any of them about why this is the place where they want to do the protesting, as opposed to, say, in other eras of protest in America, students have gone down to Washington to go to the White House or have held rallies at the Pentagon? Anything about that?
Yeah, you'd think if you want to change government policy, you'd go to where government is. And I asked people, why haven't you gone to Washington? Do you plan to go protest in Washington? And pretty much all the student protesters that I spoke to said that they feel like this is their community. They've spent a huge amount of money on tuition here. It's important to them that that tuition is invested in things that they believe in and not invested in things that they don't. They said that they also feel like they don't really want to be involved in electoral politics at all, but their protests here are influencing national policy, and they were happy about that.
Haley Ott for us at Columbia University. Thank you so much, Haley. Now to downtown Manhattan for another day in court for Donald Trump. The judge overseeing his New York criminal trial ordered Trump to pay $9,000 for violating a gag order. The order bars Trump from making public comments about witnesses, prosecutors, court staff, and jurors connected to his trial for charges that he falsified business records to cover up hush money payments. His punishment also came with an added warning. If Trump continues to willfully violate the order, the court could impose an incarceratory punishment, meaning jail time. With that warning, court continued, and a sixth witness was called to the stand, a lawyer who once represented Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Keith Davidson testified he worked with Michael Cohen to secure hush money payments for his then clients in 2016 to keep quiet about their alleged relationships with Trump. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman joins me now. Katrina, good to have you again with us. Okay, we know about the gag order, but did it clarify anything in terms of what Donald Trump can say and cannot say in that original gag order?
To an extent, because one issue here was the fact that he was reposting other people's posts, and the judge acknowledged that that was an issue of first impression. This has never been dealt with before. And he said that reposts can be viewed as the person's statements, but it's also dependent on context. So it's not a blanket rule. It's not always going to be the case. Another thing he brought up is that this gag order is meant to protect witnesses, jurors, but if people are taking advantage of that, then they could lose its protection. So for instance, if Michael Cohen is posting attacks about Trump, maybe he won't be protected by the gag order anymore. Right,
so it's not a free shot for people to attack Trump.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, for those who might just be tuning in again, where are we in the drama, in the narrative of this case?
So we left off today with Keith Davidson, and he is the former attorney for Karen McDougal, who was a Playboy model who said she had an affair with Donald Trump and with, or for Stormy Daniels as well. My apologies. But really, the prosecution has been laying the foundation of their case. They started with a key witness, David Pecker, who was integral to this catch-and-kill scheme that was allegedly devised between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen, his former lawyer. And now we're also seeing some smaller witnesses, but who are also very significant. Michael Cohen's banker, for example, who established the LLC and bank account that the Stormy Daniels payment was made out of, and who also said that when Michael Cohen filled out the forms for that account, he said it wasn't for any political candidate, which would have added a layer of scrutiny, perhaps delayed things. We met Trump's former executive assistant, who validated that he had the contact information for Stormy Daniels and for Karen McDougal, and that she'd seen Stormy Daniels, she thought, on the 26th floor. And today there was a witness who was only on the stand for about 20 minutes. He was there to validate some C-SPAN videos where Trump was responding to attacks from women, but the prosecution was really using that as a way to bring in, they couldn't bring in direct evidence that these women claimed Trump had assaulted them. So instead, they showed the videos where he was responding to those attacks as a way to present it to the jury. So really, we're seeing these building blocks. And I think as they bring in bigger witnesses, perhaps Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, all of these little layers that they've been using also to bring in certain types of evidence the jury needs to see are going to show why we've been kind of seeing these witnesses. And that C-SPAN bit, that was basically to, I don't mean to use this term pejoratively, but smuggle in that information because it's not allowed directly. Is that right? In a way, yes. And the judge had said that they could show Trump's emotional response. It showed his state of mind, they said. But it's also laying this foundation of the campaign being worried about these allegations from women coming out. And that will also play into why he didn't want the story about Stormy to come out. Excellent. Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much, as always. Thanks. House Democrats say they will help Republican Speaker Mike Johnson keep his job. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced a motion to vacate last month, claiming that Johnson had cooperated too much with Democrats. That same issue led former Speaker Kevin McCarthy to be removed from his job last year. Then came Johnson's push to pass a bipartisan $95 billion foreign aid package. Greene did not support it and even tried to strip funds for Ukraine. Johnson's rejection of Greene's demands is what ultimately could save his speakership. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries released a statement with other top members of the party celebrating the passage of the bill, saying, quote, "Upon completion of our national security work, the time has come to turn the page on this chapter of pro-Putin Republican obstruction." The statement goes on to say that if Greene invokes the motion to vacate the chair, it will not succeed. Sources tell CBS News the Biden administration plans to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. Marijuana is classified the same as heroin and LSD, meaning they're not accepted for medical use and have potential for abuse. This change would recognize weed's medicinal purposes, but it stops short of legalizing cannabis for recreational uses. The immediate effect of rescheduling will likely be less effective since federal prosecutions for marijuana possession have been rare in recent years. The proposal must be reviewed by the White House Office of Management and Budget. Then there's a public comment period and a judge's review before officials publish the final rule. The U.S. could soon welcome some Palestinian refugees from Gaza. CBS News is reporting that the Biden administration is considering it. Plus, we'll get an update from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg chief of police on the ambush that killed 4 officers. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Mr. President, there's a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about.
Does this carrier strike group stand ready?
Just incredible to see there's an active search and rescue operation going on 12 hours after this accident.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm
choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
April 29th began like other mornings on Galway Drive. Sunny, neighbors at home working and cleaning, children in school nearby. Then, at around 1:30, officers attempted to serve a warrant to previously convicted felon Terry Clark Hughes, Jr. From the upstairs, Hughes began shooting at the officers, out the front, out the back. Officers returned fire. SWAT trucks swarmed the street. A helicopter circled above. The scene brought one neighbor who served in Desert Storm to tears. At least 100 rounds were fired in the 3-hour standoff. The suspect eventually came out of the house still armed and was killed. 4 officers were wounded and 4 others killed. Among the dead, Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer Joshua Iyer. His department's chief of police, Johnny Jennings, joins us now. Chief, thank you so much for being with us. How are you and your officers doing in the wake of all of this?
Well, probably as well as can be expected. It's been such a whirlwind of things going on. It's really difficult to even pause and think about how you're feeling. But we know we still have a job to do despite all of this tragedy, and our officers have really stepped up to the plate and supported each other and loved each other. And I think that's what's going to get us through in the end.
And Chief, on the specifics of the case, what is the current assessment as to how many people were shooting?
We're still sorting through that. We're not ruling anything out. I know I came out and indicated there could have been a second shooter. We're not ready to definitively say that yet, but there is that possibility. But that's what all the evidence is going to tell us at the end of the day when we start looking at timelines and matching up body-worn camera footage with certain things that were occurring on the scene. So we'll definitely get to that point at some point in the investigation, but we're not ready to say definitively yet.
Chief Jennings, there was an AR-15, a .40 caliber handgun, as well as magazines and ammunition for both. You've been on the force, I believe, for more than 30 years. What is it like facing that kind of firepower that the suspect had in this case?
It's unimaginable when you get a high-powered rifle with rapid fire, and just even the sound in and of itself can be traumatic. And when you know that you're being fired upon, and not only being fired upon, but you also have a mission to go in and save officers who are currently down. And as you're doing that, you see officers getting shot as well, and that's just a heroic act by all of the men and women involved in this response. And I couldn't be more proud of what they did and to be able to say that I'm a police officer based on their actions, and just devastating outcome, but there could have been more lives lost had they not acted the way they did.
How different does it feel now in law enforcement than when you joined in 1992 with that kind of firepower in the world?
Well, I think it's a lot different. I was actually on the phone on the way to get ready for this interview, that just talking about the difference in what we saw when we were younger officers and the things that we did that we definitely would not do now when we were fighting the war on drugs and chasing people and getting out with people with little to no backup. And I think things are just so much different now that I think society has lost a great deal of respect, not just for one another, but also for law enforcement, with a lot of the things that we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years. And it just makes it so difficult, and it's devastating to what we try to do when we're trying to keep our community safe.
And as a final question, Chief, you mentioned this earlier, but as a law enforcement officer, you and your colleagues wake up every morning knowing that there might be a day like this, even though this was a particularly awful and terrible day. Remind us again of what you tell officers, new officers joining the force, about that risk, about that service that they are signing up for.
Well, that's a great question. Every day you put this uniform on, there's no guarantee you're coming home. And it's not only just for the officers themselves, but for their loved ones, their family members. They sacrifice as well, and we're seeing that with the results of what happened yesterday. But officers know the dangers that they're getting into. You just hope you never have to be faced with it. At the same time, these officers yesterday acted so heroically that if I was down and needed assistance, I knew that I would know that I can count on them to come in and try and save me. So very proud of the work that they did.
Johnny Jennings, Chief of Police for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore gave an update on the recovery and rebuilding efforts Tuesday on the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which collapsed last month. The largest crane on the eastern seaboard, nicknamed Chessie, will soon be joined by Gus, the nation's largest hydraulic grabber, to help recover parts of the bridge that fell into the river.
We now have currently over 100 assets within the water, to include boats, cranes, etc. Just the pull that we have thus far has equated to over 3,300 tons.
4 temporary channels have been opened to allow vessels that have been able to enter and leave the Baltimore port. Governor Moore says so far more than 200 ships have done just that. President Biden signed a new memo Tuesday to protect key American infrastructure from foreign attacks, terrorism, and natural disasters. The updated policy directs the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, to lead the effort to mitigate these nationwide threats. It comes as officials continue to raise serious concerns over the threat of Chinese and Russian cyber attacks. Earlier this year, the U.S. said a Chinese state-sponsored group had secretly hacked its way into mass transit, pipeline, and water organizations. Haiti's 7-member Transitional Council Tuesday chose Frit Belizaire as the country's next prime minister. Belizaire is a lesser-known politician. One expert told the Associated Press this may make his leadership more acceptable to competing political parties. The Transitional Council also chose Edgar Leblanc Fils as its president. He previously served as president of Haiti's Senate. The council must now establish a cabinet and set up formal elections, all while attempting to regain control of the country from gangs that have overtaken the capital city, closed an international airport, and choked traffic at a major seaport. The founder and former CEO of Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, was sentenced Tuesday to 4 months in prison. Changpeng Zhao, also known as CZ, pleaded guilty last November to money laundering. He's accused of enabling users to transact with entities that support child sex abuse, illegal drugs, and terrorism. Users were also allowed to trade with sanctioned countries like Iran, Cuba, and Syria. It's the second major crypto sentencing in the past month, the first being Sam Bankman-Fried, the former founder of FTX, who was sentenced to 25 years for fraud. While parts of the plains are still recovering from a weekend of tornadoes, another round of severe storms is moving into the region. For more, here's meteorologist Alex Wilson from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Severe weather has returned to areas hit hard late last week and this weekend, and tomorrow no exception. We're looking at the plains once again. Best chances for severe weather into parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, but Texas certainly also at risk. We've got a lot of energy available for these storms out ahead of the dry line. Hail will be one of the biggest threats, and we could see some very large hailstones, 2-inch or greater. That's egg size or larger from parts of Kansas down into Texas. Greatest likelihood of hail would be there in western parts of Kansas and northwest Oklahoma. You can see the thunderstorms begin to fire during the late afternoon hours. They'll continue into the evening, also producing some very heavy rain. So we've got to watch for the risk of flash flooding with these storms moving through the period, even into Thursday morning and late in the week. In fact, rainfall still to come between now and Friday, looking at some 2 to 3 inch totals through parts of Texas. Areas in yellow could see over 3 inches, but a lot of 1 to 2 inch amounts. And for more in-depth coverage, watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming device.
Alex Wilson, thank you. Archaeologists have unearthed an ancient Roman dodecahedron, which will go on display in England next week. You might be thinking, John, what am I looking at here? You're not alone in this. Historians have asked that same question for centuries. The 12-sided hollow object is roughly 3 inches wide and estimated to be 1,700 years old. It's one of roughly 130 known dodecahedrons in the world, 33 of which were found in Britain. Possible theories of what the devil it could be include that it was a religious item, a tool to make something, or a kind of magic 8-ball used to make decisions. If only we knew how to talk to it to help us decide what it is. If you suffer from allergies, it's helpful to know how much pollen is out there, but counting pollen in the United States is time-consuming and expensive. So some researchers are tasking artificial intelligence with the job. How's that work? We'll show you. You're streaming The Daily Report.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes. Did you ever have these problems before the derailment? No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm John Dickerson. Here are some additions to our top stories. The judge overseeing former President Donald Trump's New York criminal trial has fined Trump $9,000 and is threatening jail time. The two measures stem from Trump violating his gag order, which bars him from criticizing witnesses and others involved in the case. Sources tell CBS News the U.S. will move to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. The DEA proposal would not legalize recreational cannabis, but would recognize marijuana's medical uses and acknowledge it has less abuse potential than the most dangerous drugs. Pro-Palestinian protests keep escalating around the country. At Columbia University in New York, dozens of protesters took over a building on campus early Tuesday morning. The university is now threatening to expel those students. The White House is considering welcoming some Palestinians from Gaza into the United States as refugees. This is according to internal federal documents obtained by CBS News. The Palestinians under consideration would include individuals with immediate family who are either U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Last year, the U.S. moved 60,000 refugees from around the world, but only 56 of them were Palestinian. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will carry out an operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, even if there is a ceasefire deal with Hamas. More than half of Gaza's population of 2.3 million people has been sheltering in Rafah from the war. Aid agencies have warned that a military offensive there could be catastrophic and would result in large-scale civilian casualties. Bob Kitchen joins me for more. He's the Vice President of Emergencies at the International Rescue Committee. Bob, thank you for being with us. You recently visited Gaza. What did you see?
Well, I saw intense overcrowding and a public health emergency waiting to happen in Rafah, the southern city. People are living everywhere in tents set up in the median of streets. They're living in unfinished buildings literally everywhere. Right now, Rafah is more than twice as densely populated as New York City. And with city services offline, there are mountains of trash and rivers of sewage flowing everywhere. So those and the fact that there's not enough water and nowhere near enough food results in a real clear and dangerous mix that's already driving a desperate humanitarian situation.
And you mentioned that, I mean, how would a potential invasion of Rafah worsen what you've already just described? And what are people's fears about what could happen with an offensive?
Well, there's a tangible sense of panic. I heard from many people in Rafah who have heard Prime Minister Netanyahu announcing that the offensive will proceed, that a date has been selected with or without, just as you said, a deal or a ceasefire in place. So the civilian population haven't been told where they should go, and they know that nowhere is safe in Gaza right now. And aid organizations like the International Rescue Committee, we've not been told where to plan, how to get ready and where to get ready to accept 1 million people who are going to be displaced again. The offensive will cause tens of thousands of more people to be killed in fighting, and we fear many more will die through displacement and the public health emergency that will come with it.
On Monday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. has seen, his word, measurable progress in the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Help us understand, or help us evaluate that statement in terms of the scale of aid coming into the territory as you see it.
Well, I think it's way too soon to celebrate. We've seen a slight increase in the average of trucks crossing per day, But still, with even the 10 or 15 more trucks, we're still seeing well under half the number of trucks that crossed the day before the war. And the population wasn't facing a famine then. They didn't need to recover from a famine then. So the number of trucks crossing is only also part of the story, with 40% of aid convoys requesting permission to travel inside Gaza being turned down by the Israelis. So there is really only a trickle of aid still getting through to people who are starving, who need water, and we really need to work to increase that to a sustained torrent of aid. So way too soon to celebrate.
Israel is denying reports of multiple mass graves found at multiple hospitals in Gaza following the Israeli military's withdrawal. What do you understand of those reports of those mass graves based on your information?
Well, I can tell you that we were tracking doctors and patients in Al-Shifa, and we've lost touch with them. I can tell you that patients arriving from Al-Shifa to our doctors in the middle area have told us horrible stories of seeking permission to access the bodies of their loved ones who were killed in the hospital, only to be told to stand back and watch as forklift trucks and excavators buried bodies on top of bodies in shallow graves. And I can tell you that our staff and partner organizations in the UN have confirmed that many of those bodies were naked and they had their hands tied behind their backs when they were shot. So these are gruesome accounts, but they're only one sliver of what has been happening across Gaza over the last 6 months.
Bob, as a final question, the IRC does work all over the world. Help us understand or put in context the complexity of this rescue operation and in Gaza.
Well, the IRC works in 40, 50 countries around the world, and I've been doing this work for the last 25 years. I've worked in all of the major war zones. I've never seen another conflict where 2 million people are cornered, slaughtered, and then starved in such a coordinated way. The constraints on aid getting in and being distributed, the safety or lack of safety for aid workers, all of this being piled on top. It's a unique and terrible situation that can't be allowed to continue. We need a ceasefire immediately.
Bob Kitchen with the International Rescue Committee, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
The Israeli military says 2 reservists were killed by friendly fire in Gaza over the weekend. Officials say a preliminary investigation found an Israeli tank mistakenly identified the soldiers as enemies and opened fire. According to reports, the tank began shooting outside of its defined boundaries. The IDF says it is investigating the conduct of troops involved in the incident. According to Israel's foreign ministry, 263 soldiers have been killed in the battle since the beginning of ground operations in Gaza started back in October last year. Axios is reporting, meanwhile, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned about possible arrest warrants over the alleged war crimes in Gaza. He reportedly asked President Biden to help stop the International Criminal Court from issuing any of those warrants. The Netherlands-based court could target Netanyahu himself and other senior officials. U.S. officials say arrest warrants could jeopardize a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Now to the war in Ukraine. A Russian missile attack Monday hit a beloved landmark in Odessa and killed 5 people. Citizens affectionately called the ornate building the Harry Potter Castle for its Gothic, turreted style and its use as an educational institution. 32 people were injured in the attack, including 2 children and a pregnant woman. Odessa is a frequent target for Russian missile and drone attacks due to the city's port infrastructure. Flash flooding and a landslide killed more than 70 people in Kenya. At least 150,000 people have been displaced. More rain is in the forecast. The country's cabinet has ordered residents of flood-prone areas to evacuate or be moved by force. Kenya's education ministry has delayed reopening schools until May 6th, 1 week after they were supposed to reopen. AI assistants may soon be able to do much more than play your favorite music or call your mom. They could be responsible for nearly every aspect of our daily lives. But of course, there are some ethical dilemmas. Our Erica Brown will break those down next. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good? Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
It's the clock, it's ticking. Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
The Agriculture Department is testing ground beef in states where dairy cows tested positive for bird flu. This is because old dairy cows are sometimes processed into ground beef. The new round of testing comes after regulators Friday said they did not find live bird flu in retail milk samples thanks to pasteurization. Just as testing reaffirmed the safety of the milk supply, officials said they remain confident in the safety of the meat supply. New guidelines say women should start getting screened for breast cancer once they turn 40. It's a shift from the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force previous guidelines. It used to recommend screenings for women at 50 and that anyone younger speak with their doctor. Experts cite the rising number of breast cancer diagnoses among younger women as a major factor behind the change. The FDA finalized new regulations that would give more oversight to the $10 billion lab testing industry. They'll require all lab tests to register with the FDA and report any problems or errors. The agency says it will not require approval of tests with no alternatives, specifically for certain rare diseases. The industry, however, isn't too keen on this oversight, arguing that it may limit innovation. Hey Siri, let's discuss the future of artificial intelligence. Advanced AI assistants in development could soon have that conversation, book a vacation, or even manage your social calendar. While this technology would be largely beneficial to our daily lives, researchers with DeepMind, a division of Google responsible for artificial intelligence research, say advanced AI assistants are likely to raise a number of profound ethical and societal questions for users of the technology. for developers and for society more widely. For more, let's bring in CBS News reporter Erica Brown. Erica, I'm so glad you looked into this. When people think of artificial intelligence assistants, they think of Siri or Amazon's Alexa, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something much more developed than that.
That's right, John. What we're talking about is technology that experts say is going to fundamentally change how we interact with AI, how we work, how we learn, and how we grow. And this technology is projected to far surpass the current capabilities of, as you mentioned, Alexa and Siri that we have access to right now. So what are we talking about? We're talking about technology that can operate as your sort of personal chief of staff, a daily task manager, or even an educational tutor or research assistant, a counselor, companion, or friend. And in this report by DeepMind, which is a subsidiary of Google, they raised some concerns about some of the ethical and societal implications of this technology. And one thing that's interesting about this report, John, is the methodology. This report, they say, is based on sort of ethical foresight because a lot of this technology simply doesn't exist yet or users don't have access to it yet. And so they're using ethical foresight to project some of the implications of this technology based on current trends, trajectories, and computer science.
Well, that term ethical foresight, when you used it in our story meeting, that fascinated me because AI is literally talking to us because I said the word Siri and now it won't be quiet. You see, it's already trying to butt in. Ethical foresight has fascinated me because AI is moving so fast that if you don't think through these things and that line between something we might use as a tool and something we might suddenly give ourselves up to when it becomes more powerful, you talk to an expert about how they do this ethical foresight.
That's right. So I spoke to Karen Panetta. She's the dean of the Graduate School of Engineering at Tufts University. She's also a fellow with the IEEE, which is an Electrical Engineering Association. And I asked her, how can developers kind of get ahead of some of the risks that this rapidly advancing assistant technology could pose? Here's what she said.
It all comes down to the data collection. You know, those of us that do research understand that we have to collect it ethically and responsibly, and that we have to try to include all the possible stakeholders and perspectives that we're going to expect this AI to use.
And so when you think of some of the possible dangers of this, what are they?
So 3 things stood out to me in this report, John. 1, misinformation. Now, misinformation through the prism of technology, that's not new. That's something that users and developers have been grappling with for years. But when we look at it through assistant technology tech, they're concerned that this could create a sort of ideological echo chamber for users. So as this tech learns more about the user, its preferences, its views, their ideological stances, they're in essence will feed you what they think you want to hear, which could be partial, biased information, and that can be really problematic if you're relying on this tech in an educational or research capacity. Another thing, the human assistance interaction stood out to me. This is really fascinating. So experts are projecting that this technology will become more and more human-like. So they'll be able to master natural language, human cues, kind of mimicking the way we're talking to one another right now. This could foster a trust between user and tech, and then the user may actually share private, sensitive information with this tech that could be misused or manipulated. And lastly, equity and access is another big issue. With all the good that this technology is projected to bring, it could further exacerbate some of the global disparities that already exist. So in order to take advantage of some of this technology, you need the infrastructure. So for communities and countries that don't have data centers or network connectivity, they may fall further and further behind, while others who have limitless access to this are going to get further and further ahead.
Erica Brown, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. Artificial intelligence is also being deployed in the fight against seasonal allergies. CBS News national correspondent Dave Malkoff shows us how technology is changing the long and tedious process of pollen counting.
Atlanta is known as a city in a forest.
It's kind of crazy.
It was on one of Atlanta's legendary high pollen days when Emory professor Dr. Young Liu started feeling off.
I just couldn't breathe. I'm like struggling for air.
The professor who studies environmental health,
let's see what's happening,
was stumped.
until he got the diagnosis.
Adult onset asthma. I never heard of it.
Because of pollen, something that's getting worse because of warming temperatures caused by climate change.
Runny nose, itchy eyes. It's torture.
Those symptoms are exacerbated by the amount of pollen in the air, which is determined by a daily pollen count. Here's how it's measured. Single to double digits is low. In the 1500 range is very high. Anything beyond that is an off-the-charts day, like just recently in Atlanta. In early April, the pollen count was extremely high, reaching 8740. That is the third highest day since Atlanta Allergy and Asthma started counting this stuff back in 1991.
So many people don't realize what we do. They think it's done by a machine.
It's not. Trained technicians remove the grains from this device, then under a microscope, they count each one.
I think sometimes I forget the impact that the pollen count has on our patients, friends, family.
It's considered the most accurate way, but it's also expensive and time-consuming. That's part of the reason why there are fewer than 90 certified stations across the country. And some states don't even have one.
The pollen monitoring in the U.S. is very, very sparse.
Let's see what you got out there. I'm excited to see what's outside. New technology like this can automatically count pollen and provide live, hyper-local data. Dr. Liu is testing its accuracy.
It's portable and it's AI-driven. So it has the ability to provide real-time pollen monitoring near you.
It won't replace hand counting, but it will give you more information about what's floating around your neighborhood.
I think in 5 years, we will be able to make more reliable pollen forecast hour by hour. So that can really help a lot of people.
To know what's causing your symptoms and when to be ready for them. Dave Malkoff, CBS News, Atlanta.
Still to come, the curtain is about to go up on Broadway's biggest night. Who's in the running for this year's Tony Awards after a season packed with debuts? You're streaming The Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack. 9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen.
She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
At the CBS Evening News, we focus on solutions, finding solutions to healthcare problems, how much money we can spend on groceries, finding solutions to help people understand what are the right choices to make for you and your family.
The James Webb Telescope has revolutionized how we see the universe. Now, a nebula 1,300 light years away is getting a new look. These images show the Horsehead Nebula. It's located in the Orion constellation, and NASA says it's one of the most distinctive objects in our skies. Astronomers are interested in studying the nebula because new stars form there, but the formation won't last forever. NASA says the nebula is no longer surrounded by gas clouds and estimate it will disintegrate in about 5 million years. The curtain is up on nominations for the 77th Annual Tony Awards. With a jam-packed spring season, the competition was tough. 4 productions have been nominated for the highly coveted Best Musical Award. They are Hell's Kitchen, Illinois, The Outsiders, Snuffs, and Water for Elephants. Hell's Kitchen and Stereophonic have the most nominations, with 13 each. This year also has a record number of women nominated for Best Director, with 3 in the play category and 4 in the musical category. You can watch the Tonys here on CBS and Paramount Plus, June 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. Protesters and police clash on college campuses amid large pro-Palestinian demonstrations. The ultimatum one university is giving students in an attempt to quell the unrest. Plus, the community of Charlotte, North Carolina, is mourning the death of 4 officers killed in the line of duty. We speak with the city's police chief about the ongoing investigation. And Donald Trump is held in contempt in his New York City criminal case. The jury also hears from a lawyer who represented key players. We have the highlights. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis? You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
Why?